We recently made a post on our YouTube community tab and asked, in what way does YouTube provide you with meaning and purpose? And we got a response here that I think is pretty good. This person says, YouTube has made me feel like I made a difference in the world and made me feel good about myself, but has also played into my anxieties and made my depression worse because I can't help but look at the numbers. It's a constant roller coaster, and sometimes I feel like I can't handle the ride, even though I simultaneously don't want to get rid of it. It's a true love-hate relationship at this point. And I think that's common for a lot of creators, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whether it's just like obsession, whether it's just like work-life balance, like you love what you do and it's important for you to get this message out and to grow this business. But on the other hand, it's like the rest of my life is somehow suffering as a result. And today we want to talk about that common issue of steps to balance, steps to managing highs and lows, and a proper framework for how to think about YouTube as it fits into our overall life so that it stays in its proper place.
Hey, welcome to the Video Creators Podcast presented by vidIQ. You know how you put a lot of time and energy into your YouTube channel for not nearly enough growth? Yep, we get it. We are here today to help you change that.
Hello, creator. How are you? It's great to see you again for another Video Creators podcast episode like we do here every week, just to help you grow your YouTube audience, your channel, and the business that you're growing around that content and around the message that you're spreading. And we just really want to dive into some next level strategy with you. Usually, today I want to talk about some life strategy maybe to help you improve your content strategy on your channel maybe. Today I'm hanging out here with two of the YouTube strategists on our team here at Video Creators, Sam and Ingrid. Good to see both of you again.
Yeah.
Hi, Sam.
Howdy.
How's it going?
Pretty good. Good to see you guys.
I think that's going to be, Ingrid, I think it's going to be part of Sam's like primal branding. Howdy.
Howdy.
He can't take that.
Yeah. It's been done by other people before for sure, but yeah, it's definitely the same thing too. And how about you, Ingrid? How are you?
Thing. I'm good.
And I'm doing fine too. Although I hear that fine is not an appropriate, you can't say I'm doing good or doing fine. Those are not feelings. Those are just ways of not having to actually think about how you're doing. So,
I know. I've started to not enjoy the word fine, but yet I use it all day long.
Yeah, it's a good cop-out word. Yeah. Like, I don't really want to give you an answer. Don't want to get into it, so I'm doing fine. How's that for a kickoff to a conversation about potential therapy from YouTube?
Yeah.
I'm curious before we dive in here from each of you, because each of you are creators and maybe not as actively, like me, not as actively a creator as you were before started working here and started working other people's creativity. But if you were to describe your relationship with YouTube in one word, that's not fine or good, what word would you use? I'm putting you guys on the spot for this. Currently, your relationship with YouTube, and be honest.
As a creator or just in general?
Just in general, yeah. Including coaching, including strategy you're doing for
Mine's
creators.
influx.
Influx. Is that hyphenated? I guess we'll give it to you.
I guess. If I have to go with one word, it's hyphenated, but technically it's two words.
Tell me what that means.
Well, I, like most creators, I've been on the platform for a decade and, just kind of finding a new path and a new voice. So everything that I've been doing on my channel is a little in flux right now.
I feel like mine's pretty similar. I want to say like under construction or something like that.
Nice.
I know that's two words. I have found, I think as a creator, it's been so off and on for me. Like when I think back to the last couple of years, I might have a month or two where I'm, I've got a lot of time. I'm really motivated. I can just create on YouTube. I make a couple of videos and then things get busy, just kind of falls to the wayside and other things are a priority. And then I don't upload for like 9 months. And then it's kind of that sort of cycle. So I think it's under construction and I always look forward to those times in the year where I have some more space and I can just be creative.
I think the word I would use right now is consumer. Because when I was a creator, I didn't really consume a whole lot. I mean, so I started off as a consumer, and that's part of what sparked the creative side and contributing to back then what was like a YouTube community. Now it's way too big for that. But and then as the more and more I focused on creating, the less and less I was consuming. But now, having done this for 16 years now or something, I'm not creating hardly at all, and which feels good, to be honest. It feels good to just kind of take a step back, and just focus on like what's important to me and why right now. And I do enjoy getting on YouTube, usually on my phone, a few times a week, and just catching up with whatever's on the home feed. I'm not one of those diehards that's going through every video on my subscription feed or whatever. And it's a mix of content from like skits and comedy to TED Talks to Jordan Peterson to jiu-jitsu techniques. It's just woodworking stuff's in there too. It's just a big mix of, what YouTube grows to learn about you. So yeah, I enjoy getting there and just kind of chilling now. And it's been good because I haven't done that in years. I've always been watching other people's videos who are working with as creators or my own, and just to kind of get back to, this is just what I want to watch and enjoy on YouTube. It's been fun. We'll get more into that, maybe mental health space of YouTube here in a second. But before we jump in, we want to introduce you to this week's Creator Spotlight, one of the creators in our community who's doing some things we can learn from. Sam, you're going to introduce us to a creator, David Stacy.
Yeah, David Stacy. Yeah. So David, he actually did a consultation with you, Ingrid, a little while back. And he's currently going through the Video Labs program with Blake over there. So he's got a channel called Dad Bod Fitness, which is an awesome name, by the way. I love it.
I thought of Tim when I first
I got to go on to subscribe to now.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So he did a creator spotlight with Blake, talking through just some of his roadblocks that he's been running into and just what he's learning as far as next steps go and just next level strategy and things that he's learning in Video Labs. So here's David sharing some of his story.
Well, David, thanks so much for talking today. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your channel, a little bit about your story and how you got started on YouTube.
Yeah, so for years I'd always thought about it back when it was still young, and I never did it. Reached a point in my career in accounting, and I was just done with office work, and felt like I wanted to start something new, but didn't know what. My wife ended up, for the small business that she runs, wanted me to do a 30-day challenge with her, a 30-day eating challenge. And through as much as I didn't want to do that, because it was pretty insane, but through doing that, I lost 10 pounds in 4 weeks, saw my abs for the first time, and it like sparked this fire in me of wanting to be fit, wanting to build muscle. And I was like, that needs to be what I focus on for YouTube. I want to help other parents be able to do that.
So what are some of the roadblocks you've run into as a creator?
Oh gosh, time. Time, knowing what to do. There's so much information out there. Over the course of the time that I've been doing YouTube, I've spent tons of time diving into all the different information that they have out there and trying to figure out what it is to, how to make things work. Cause it's, it's been a slow process. And I mean, also having the skills, having the right skills, to learn how to edit, the thumbnails, but ultimately learning how to get people to actually click. So that's been keeping people's attention, especially with how short people's attention spans are becoming now. That's been making it very difficult. But yeah, and the time too, honestly, I'm a dad of 4 and my wife runs a small business. I run a small business in remodeling. So I'm doing this with the very small amount of time that I have left over. But yeah, so that makes it difficult. So I've got to make what I do really count. I've got to make sure it's effective and I'm doing the things that matter the most.
Right. Awesome. Cool. So I know you've been in a consultation with Ingrid. I know you're in Video Labs right now too, which is awesome to have you in there. What are some key takeaways from both those areas that you'll be implementing in your channel?
Right. I mean, even going back to the consultation was eye-opening. Ingrid was phenomenal to be able to work with, just being able to have other eyes. Cause I got to the point where I was like, my wife can give me some input, but not everything that I need. It doesn't give me a lot of perspectives. So she does her best with what she can, but it's like getting outside of my own head has been insanely helpful. Just be able to get other eyes on my content, the way I'm portraying things, because I have an idea of what I'm doing. I know if I put out a video, I know what I'm trying to get across. but people don't always get that when they're looking at it. And so meeting with Ingrid was like, even that alone, I had a drastic change, like in thumbnails, in the hooks at the end of my videos, trying to get people to the next one. So I think one of the biggest takeaways for even just meeting with Ingrid was just understanding how to pitch value with a little bit of tension. So that was incredibly helpful. Like I used to pitch, I knew the basics, and this was like, you get this information just watching free content online that, oh yeah, you should pitch to the next video. But how to get people to actually listen and then click all goes back to the tension piece. So that was super helpful, just getting me to think of, okay, what's the unique piece of information that I can offer here that will actually make them want to go click. I've always still dealt very surfacey, even though I know deep down why I'm doing the channel and why I want to build muscle and be fit. And then for my target audience, being able to actually write it down. I mean, build my target audience, write down who I'm trying to reach and what are their deepest pain points. So that's huge. Just being able to kind of approach my content in a different way. And then of course, I mean, storytelling, I knew storytelling, but implementing it was like a whole nother, I can tell you all day long that I know you need to build story into your videos, but to actually make it happen without practicing it, getting an idea of how to do that's been invaluable. So
awesome. Cool. So let's say there's someone else trying to grow their channel like you. What's a piece of advice you'd give them moving forward?
I mean, number one, the biggest piece of advice is just to be consistent. Keep practicing, because it's a skill. I mean, some people, have this naturally. But understanding how to craft those stories, how to make yourself relatable and connect with your audience, that does and can come over time. And then beyond that, I think the biggest thing that I would encourage people to walk away with is just really spending more time on thumbnails and titles. And I've heard people talk about that. Tim's interviewed a lot of people where they're like, oh, I spend like hours on just thumbnails alone. And although I couldn't do that just because of the way my lifestyle is, I'm doing what I can with what I have. So I've now changed my process. Like just today, actually last night, I was working on a new thumbnail and actually created 3 completely separate thumbnail ideas, which normally like I'll have a thumbnail idea and then I just tweak some things about it. But this is the first time I was like, I need to think differently outside of the box. What's the piece of tension in your video, and try to portray that in the thumbnail and come up with literally 3 different ideas. So I came up with 3 different ideas, and although 2 of them just probably won't work, but it at least helped me to then pinpoint further where I need to go with it. So that's been, I would say, if anything, focusing on the tension in your thumbnails and then practicing that skill of getting creative. How do you portray that and make the question? I love the way Ingrid put it when we met. She said she can always tell when she's looking at a thumbnail title because she can just like feel it in her gut. And like after talking to this, like I've had a moment or 2 of those. So it's like getting it to that point where you can kind of feel like, oh yeah, like I think I would click on that. So hopefully that's helpful.
I love hearing that. I love hearing just creator stories running into some of these roadblocks of almost analysis paralysis of just having so much information out there and so little time and just trying to figure out how to take these next steps forward. So if you find yourself in a similar position and you're just looking for some assistance and just somebody to come alongside you, hear your story, and just learn a little bit more about how to take those next best steps, we would love to jump into a free 15-minute discovery call with you just to hear some of your story and help you along the road. So if you're interested in jumping into one of these discovery calls and just talking through what we do, how we can come alongside you and help you with this journey, you can visit videocreators.com/discovery call, and we'll talk to you there.
When I think about my experience on YouTube over the past 16 years, 16 years is a really long time.
I was just thinking 16 years.
And as we're recording this episode, I'm like, how did that happen? 16 years, because my personality is such that I don't really stick to something for that long. Typically, one of two things happens. Either I climb the ladder and master the thing and then get bored, or it's just too frustrating and I quit and go find something else. Right. So I don't know what happened here. Maybe it's a combination of both in some ways, in different ways. But there certainly have been times that I've had to kind of just keep YouTube in its proper place and kind of do a gut check here of what's going on. And so I don't know. I think one of the first things that's helped me do this and achieve some sense of longevity on this platform is just having a really deep-seated why. A mission to what we're doing. For those who don't know the story, when I was first starting on YouTube and I had a full-time job, I thought my career for the rest of my life was going to be youth and family worker. Thought I was going to be a youth pastor at a church for the rest of my life. And that's all my undergrad and graduate degrees, stuff that I worked on was all in that field. And I loved it because I love seeing life change happen in people's lives. But as I was doing more and more on YouTube, and my girlfriend and wife and I were doing videos together, we were hearing more stories of life change and impact coming out of what we were doing on YouTube than I ever saw or heard in 12 years of doing ministry inside of a church. And that's not necessarily a dog on the church. It just kind of was my experience. And I thought, if I really want to impact people and change their lives, I think YouTube might be a more fruitful place to do that. And so there's a lot of other things that happened as well, but that was kind of like the driving mission of why I'm doing this on YouTube. I don't think I've actually ever shared this publicly. You two know it, Ingrid and Sam, but like our purpose is to create glimpses of a better world. And that's what we kind of internally call the ripple effect, which is how do we work with the creator so that their message spreads and reaches more people so that their lives are changed by that. And then once their lives are changed by that, what kind of difference does that person make in the lives of the people around them? And it's just this ripple effect. We get to influence the influencers, so to speak. Like we get to work with the creator and have some sort of impact on them that helps their business and their channel grow and their message spread. So I remember thinking years ago when I started Video Creators, it was like, I have a message to spread. I have a message and I think it could help some people. But what if I could help other creators spread their messages, stories I don't have, messages I don't have, missions I don't have, and can't embody nearly the way they do? What if I could come alongside of them and help and empower them to do that? Then what kind of impact could we have in the world? And so having that mission front and foremost in front of my mind is here on my
literally
wall.
To your side.
It's a big thing. We hire and fire based on a lot of those core values of people first, mission oriented, and results driven. And keeping that in front of us as a team, not because it was something smart I decided to do, but just like I have a hard time functioning without that. Like that's the filter through how we make decisions and what we spend our time on. And sometimes like, clients that we work with and don't work with and such. So, I think for me, the way I operate anyway, if you knowing my mission and why I'm doing this and having it literally on the wall next to me right here, if you're watching the video version of this, you kind of see it on our wall, then that helps me keep success defined, keeps driving me kind of pushing forward of like, this is what I'm going to publish next, and identifies what like the vision of equipping 10,000 life changers looks like. And so I like it because it also avoids making it all about views and subs, which is kind of like that person's story in the beginning. When it's about views and subs, I think that becomes debilitating over time. As opposed to, is my message spreading? Am I sharing it effectively? Is it impacting and reaching people's lives? Am I getting more stories and comments and emails of people who are saying this has been helpful, and are more people buying to get the next level of encouragement and support and help that we're offering? Those types of things. There you go. I'll stop talking for a second. Reactions, thoughts, comments, objections.
Yeah, I think I have just a thought. I mean, I feel like all that's so good. I think it's so important to have a deep why at the heart of what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing. And it's kind of nice to leave it kind of open enough where maybe it's something that it can never be finished. Like it's just kind of this ongoing pursuit that's driving you. I would just say, maybe just to add to that, I think it's okay for that why to maybe evolve and change over time as well. If years go by and maybe it's not resonating the same way as it did when you first started, or, last week, the last podcast, we talked about red ocean versus blue ocean. Maybe there are new opportunities in a more blue ocean. You can better serve a specific group of people and move into more of a blue ocean. And you can kind of slightly tweak what this why is. That can be kind of reinvigorating too, as a creator, just to have more clarity on, okay, this is not just what I'm doing, but this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So even maybe just doing a gut check, if you feel yourself as a creator kind of feeling stale, or maybe you just aren't really caring as much about this particular why as maybe you once did, thinking about maybe what's the next evolution of what my why is, and how does that take form, and then kind of moving forward from there, I think can be a healthy thing too.
I feel like that's a very human thing, right? Because 16 years is a long time, right, Tim?
Yeah. It feels longer in number than it's felt like in years. So I guess that's a good thing.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, you as a human just evolve. Think of how much has changed in your life over the span of 16 years, right?
Yeah.
Your kids aren't even that old.
I haven't been married for 16 years.
And you have a
this
lot
year
of them.
will be 16.
I was in middle school.
Yeah.
Little Sammy with his soccer ball.
Little Sammy with the soccer ball.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
Yeah. So it would make sense too that maybe some things do shift and evolve over time.
Yeah, I think we could do a whole episode on how do you find your mission and your why, and what do you know that looks like, and how do you know if it's the right one versus there's actually something deeper to it than that, and there's a lot there. Maybe really simply, one thing to consider with that is just like, when do you feel the most alive? And what makes you feel most alive about this? Is it the creating part? Is it the analytics part? Is it the coming up with ideas part? And I think for me, I had this aha moment. Like, I remember when this light bulb popped up above my head. I'm like, oh, I think I might be able to change more lives on YouTube than it was. We were getting comments on our videos and emails from people like, oh, thanks, we love your content. We're like, okay, yeah, thank you. And then I got one comment from a girl who said, like, I didn't grow up with a mom, and she left our family when I was little. I don't really remember her, so I didn't grow up with one. But so I don't really know what it's like to be a good mom or a good wife. But I've been watching your videos for a while. I'm getting married in 2 months, and because I've been watching your videos, I think I have an idea of how to be a good wife and a good mom one day. And I was like, that really happened from it was just my wife, just doing her thing on camera. And I was like, wow, that's cool. I didn't think much of it. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then it got a couple of comments and emails like that. But the one that I had like, okay, was, it got an email from this lady. She's like, hey, you don't know me, but I'm watching your videos for a while. Just got married a few months ago. My husband and I were already struggling in our relationship, and I don't think we're going to make it. But I watched that video of you and your wife talking about how you're learning to love each other better and what that looks like for you. And I shared that video with my husband. We talked about it, and we have hope again for our marriage. I just wanted to say thank you. And that's when the light bulb moment went off. It was like, we weren't even, it's going to sound bad, like we weren't even trying to get A's on the math test, but it wasn't like that. Like, I wasn't doing that intentionally, but yeah, just sharing our story apparently had that effect. And so I'm like, well, this is our story. How could other people's lives be potentially impacted by stories that aren't getting views and aren't growing the way they should? And that's when I had that aha moment of like, oh. And so that is the thing that excites me. And that's one thing to consider anyway. It might not be the only thing to consider in trying to figure out your mission. But that is one thing. Like, what do I get most excited about? And I think if it comes down to views, subscribers, or money, I think all of those are more appropriately positioned as the result, not necessarily the mission itself. Like those are indicators that some sort of mission is being reached and to what degree is it being reached. But to make it the goal in and of itself, I think is when you can start burning out and getting tired on YouTube pretty quickly.
And I think that that's also a good point of, when you are struggling, to maybe let go of the results a little bit and focus on the things like the actions and just taking things one step at a time.
Yeah.
Finding the joy.
Yeah. The hard part is that, you guys know I've been doing some personal coaching on the side with some business coaching and life coaching with some creators. And one person said to me, like, oh, that's really interesting. We're talking about the way I approach business coaching to make set context for this, I think is helpful, is usually starts as business coaching, but it quickly gets into life coaching because we want to craft a business that supports your life and your lifestyle and what you have, right? Like, we don't want to make our lives enslaved to this business. We want to shape a business that serves our life. So we start with the business and then we quickly get into life. What do you want in your life type of stuff? And then we get back, okay, now let's go back to the business side and craft a business that supports that. And so one of these guys I'm coaching, he was talking about what that looks like in his family. And he said, in work, there's clear KPIs, key performance indicators of if you're winning or losing in your work or in your business. And, but I don't have clear KPIs for my family. There might be some that you could look at to know oh, wow, I'm losing right now in my family. But what are the KPIs that make it clear if I'm winning in my family? And I'm like, those are really good questions that we need to wrestle with and figure out. And so I think on YouTube, the KPIs are clear, the ones that are in front of you, the easy ones to look at, which are views, subscribers, and money and comments and engagement, things like that. But I think we need to figure out a way to put KPIs, or key results or something around the intangible parts that we're actually trying to accomplish and experience in our lives and on YouTube. But YouTube analytics they don't put those numbers in front of you. So by default, people just go to the views and subs and the money just because it's easy and it's there. And it's the thing everyone's kind of comparing against each other. But I think the deeper ones are harder. And which is why I think they're more fruitful. Usually if you have the harder option, the harder path is usually the more fruitful of the options. And so I think I don't know, I'm just rambling, but I think there's something there that's probably a whole other episode too.
It is a whole nother episode, but I don't think you're rambling. It makes me think of just some reports that I actually just delivered to some clients the other day. And it was kind of fun because these are clients that I worked with a little bit more on a long-term basis. So because we've worked for several months together and I'm in the back end, I get to actually see the analytics. I was able to give them a zoomed out perspective of how they did on a year as a whole versus we're always looking at the metrics so close up, you can't even see straight. You don't even see anything that's really going on because you're so close to the content, close to the edit, close to all of it. And so when I gave them the zoomed out perspective, the thing that was the most interesting in both clients were the pieces that went the farthest. The pieces that brought in the best results were the ones that were more human related and the ones that they had more fun in. It's true story. Yeah. This literally just happened this last week.
It's not surprising to hear it, but it makes sense from a creator perspective where you do want to be more serious and just deliver good info and things as opposed to the human connection piece that we usually ignore.
Both how-to channels and large channels at that. So, yeah.
So talk with us a little about analytics, Ingrid and Sam. In case both of you say, where this person who we're kind of making this episode based on is I just can't help but look at my numbers. It's a constant roller coaster. And sometimes I feel like I can't handle the ride, although I simultaneously don't want to get off of it. What thoughts do you have about how we should handle the analytics side for people who are kind of in that position?
Well, I took a very deep breath when you said that, because I immediately thought of
Getting stressed in this episode. Sorry.
best out of 10. That it's the most thing that I dread the most on the back end in YouTube Studio. This video was number 1 out of 10 or number 7 out of 10. I feel like that does a lot of times more damage to us mentally than helpful. Sorry, YouTube.
But nobody wants to get rid of it because we're addicted to that thing.
Exactly. Because you're looking for
There's confetti if you get the one.
There's confetti. Right? Yeah, you're looking for the dopamine hit of that one. Or even, I'm content if you get number 2, but anything less than that, sometimes you're like, why can't I do it? Right? And you just immediately have this letdown, and then you're trying to tweak things, and that's not really necessarily always helpful. So step back from the analytics. Step back.
So how do we use analytics in a healthy way?
I honestly, it's good to see what's going on right away, because maybe there is something that you may need to make a tweak on. Okay. But after that, move on. Just say what's next, because you can't really alter it. It's already out there. What's a better way to approach it is to maybe allow YouTube to collect some data and then look at it where you're not so close to it. Maybe 30 days later, even, quarterly. I know that's really hard and it sounds really wrong. And so I stressed so many of you out by just saying that. But Tim, you taught me this, actually, to take this massive step back, because you get your best data when you're really looking at it, I think, a little bit more holistically, right? And you have more data to actually work with than just one video.
Yeah, I think for me, I just I want to remove myself emotionally a little bit more from the content before I jump into it. And then 2, I don't really want to be in there every day. I got lots of things to do. I got businesses to run. I got family to be a part of, and chickens, property, we're training a dog right now to help us with sheep herding when we get the sheep next year. So there's a lot going on. Focused. And I found it's a much more effective use of my time to get in there and look at things, not every day, but instead get in there like once a month. And that was when I was publishing on a weekly cadence. Actually, even twice a week, I think I was getting on, because I was like, all right, here's what I'm going to try. This is exactly what you do in the action plan with creators is, here's our plan. Here's our strategy going forward. Let's execute it for a month and then reevaluate. You can't just do it video by video because there's too many other variables to consider. So you got to do it a good 4 to 6 to 10 times to kind of see, is this approach working or not in the way that we hoped it would. So I think when I was doing my own data before you guys came along, thank you. I was looking at it monthly, just kind of going in and it wasn't even that long. It was, I created the groups of the questions I had, the things I was trying to evaluate, and looked in there. I was maybe in there for like a half hour, 45 minutes, maybe max of an hour. And then it was more like a quarterly basis where I was going through and digging through stuff and like, okay, are we even on the right track? Are there opportunities here that I'm missing or things? Which is, again, is exactly the rhythm that each of you are doing with our clients too. So, zooming out, getting the bigger picture and being able to compare different ideas side by side when all the data is there, I found to be a more useful use of time than getting into it every day.
Yeah, but I feel like there's something that you. Oh, sorry, Sam. I feel like there's something that you said though that I just want to just reiterate here. When you look at it more from a zoomed out perspective, you are able to see it differently. Because there is no, like you said, there's no emotional attachment to it at that point. You'll find that when you look at a retention graph 30 days later versus, or even 60 days later versus looking at it 24, 48, 72 hours later, as we all look at it over and over and over again, right? When you look at it a little bit more removed, you're like, oh, okay, I see what I did there. Yeah, I didn't need to do that. And then you'll remember that gut feeling that you had that you ignored because your head overruled that. And it's showing up in the retention graph, where you would not be looking at it so objectively if you were so close to it, looking at it that week.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's easy to approach success, and then looking in the analytics and seeing like, is it good or bad, as this kind of black and white sort of a thing. But there's really just so much nuance in your analytics that it's hard to just jump in. And I think that's why it's easy for there to be a love-hate relationship, because it's just kind of like objective, like the 1 out of 10 thing, 10 out of 10. It's just kind of this subjective, like, oh, this is a good video or this is a bad video sort of a thing. And then you can just kind of get lost looking in the YouTube studio, and there's so much there. So I feel like maybe just to add on, I think another healthy way to spend time in analytics is to really define what your mission is moving forward. Like maybe for the next month, my focus is going to be on hooks, because I've noticed the pattern that everybody leaves in the first 30 seconds. So that's just going to be my mission. Like if I can just make this 10% better in the next month, then that's my next win. And then the next month maybe can be something else. But if you have some sort of objective that you're looking for in your analytics, and it's not just opening it up and letting YouTube tell you, is it good or bad? You can kind of have this mission going into the YouTube studio, and you're looking at something in particular. And then I totally agree with what you guys said about zooming out and having a bit of a sample size of videos. If you jump in once a month or once every couple weeks, you have a couple videos you can look at, and it's not so much, you're not so hyper focused on kind of is this next video going to finally blow up kind of thing. And then you get disappointed if it doesn't. Get a couple videos as a data sample, look at whatever your mission is, and then reevaluate. Well, okay, where are we going from here the next month? I think that can help a lot too.
I think one thing in this conversation that creators, I heard it in this lady's, not in her voice, but in her message, she didn't state it, but we get afraid to not do it. It's like we're afraid to step away. She's like, she's like, I can't handle the ride, even though I simultaneously don't want to get off of it. And sometimes it's because of the dopamine hits and all these things that are built in that keep us engaged. But sometimes it's like our own personal insecurities, our own fears. No one wants to feel like, if I stop doing this, I don't think anyone's going to miss me. Like no one wants to actually face that question, right? It's easier to keep doing the thing that's not working than to stop and be like, oh, okay, nobody's watching anyway, or I don't know. So I think that's hard. And there's also this fear like, well, momentum on my channel is going to die. There's a fear that I might not get back to it, or there's a fear that especially if it gets to the point where some of my own value and self-worth, and this is very common, not just in YouTube world where my value and self-worth is wrapped up in my views, but just more broadly speaking in my work. People often, and myself included, unfortunately, have had my identity wrapped around my work. So I was a youth pastor. I thought it was going to be my career. I was did that for 12 years and loved most of it. and then when it took 2 years after not being a youth pastor anymore for like my mentality to shift and be like, oh, that's not me. Oh, who am I now? And to find so much of my personal value wrapped up in what people thought of me as a youth worker and how I was serving their families or their teenagers or helping the parents or whatever the case might be. And when I was no longer doing that, it was like an identity crisis. And I don't know how long you have to be doing YouTube to get there, but if there's some sort of void in someone's life and they're already there, YouTube can fill that pretty quickly and you can get pretty hooked on it to the point where like, I hate this and love this at the same time because I love the attention. I love the affirmation. I love that there's not a lot of people here, but there's someone here, and at the same time, that goes to a really unhealthy place where you can't stop. You can't get away and you can't take a break and you can't remove yourself from it. Now there's plenty of other reasons why too, but like I kind of said earlier, if something's hard to do, then it's probably worth doing or at least investigating if you should do it. And if stepping away is hard, then I think that just that fact alone is probably a signal that it might be a good thing to step away from it just because it doesn't feel like it's a comfortable, fun thing to do. And then just sit in the why of why is this uncomfortable? Why is this hard? But a couple of things happen when you do take a break. Speaking from experience, as well as with experience with creators and clients, your channel, I have never seen a channel actually not recover. In fact, usually what I see happen, and I'm not talking like years of a break, I'm talking like a month or two break. Usually what happens is your next video, you come back, it does really well because everyone's excited to see you again, you know? Two, you come back with fresh ideas, fresh perspective. And three, it's easier to execute on those ideas and perspectives because you're not, it's easier for you to break away from the old patterns because you're at a kind of like a new, fresh start. And to break away from the old stuff you're doing and try something new is usually a little bit easier when coming back from the break. And hopefully, because you're also now more excited about it than you were before. And you've hopefully have been able to rest and recover, but also now have a healthier relationship with YouTube and other things in your life that will make it more sustainable going forward.
I think that's so good. It's making me think of, I feel like we've talked about Ryan Trahan a couple times just in past podcasts. But he did something really similar. I don't know if it was an interview or something a little while ago, but he did something really similar where he was making a lot of just a particular type of content and just really started to feel burnt out and like kind of lost all desire to keep making content and just really wasn't feeling fulfilled. And he took a break, and he's got a huge channel. I mean, millions of views, but he took a break and ended up kind of just thinking about the why, thinking about what he's trying to do on the platform and just as a creator, what is he trying to accomplish? And they basically, as a team, because he's got a team of I think like 4 or 5 people right now, but as a team, they kind of restructured their whole framework as how they approach content creation. And so now they look through this lens of every piece of content that we make, we see this just as like a gift that we're just giving to the viewers. And now our identity is no longer wrapped up in, are people commenting? Are they liking? What are they saying? Sort of a thing. Now it's just this, the video itself is this not an extension of the creator anymore, but now it's like a tangible thing that they're just kind of putting out. And then once it's published and out, it's kind of out of their hands. And it's like, okay, whoever accepts the gift and shows up and watches it, great. And if people don't accept that gift, that's totally fine too. And he basically said that no longer having his identity wrapped up in his content helped with the burnout and the anxiety with uploads so much.
Yeah, it's a good example because he actually, big channel, getting millions of views, like you said, but even he's started experimenting with a different style of content. Different content buckets. And that's always a great thing to also do is, if something's, causing you a lot of anxiety and it's, you're feeling the ups and the downs, and try something different just because, it's okay. If you need permission, and we give you permission to experiment.
Yeah.
If that's what you need. Like Tim said, you can't really, he didn't necessarily put in these words, but you can't break your channel. You can recover. Yeah.
Well, yeah, my point is like, you usually don't have to recover because there's nothing to recover from.
Right.
It's, that's usually more of a felt concern than a real concern based on data from YouTube and just people that we've worked with as well. Yeah. Just like, okay, hey, I took the break, and if there is any decline, the energy and the fresh ideas and perspective I bring when I come back to the channel outweigh whatever the decline was, usually make up for it and more going forward. So.
Each week we like to leave you with a power tip here, and I've got a good one for you. This has been a recent change that YouTube made in YouTube Studio. Yes, I know, I'm sending you to YouTube Studio and Analytics, but it's for a good reason. Now you have the ability to see not just what your audience is watching on videos, but also other forms of content as well. And what I want you to do is kind of use this as inspiration to keep an eye on what's happening maybe in your space. It might spark new ideas for you. You're going to go to YouTube Studio, and over on the left side, hit Analytics, and then you'll hit the Audience tab. And right there, you'll see a card that says videos, your content your audience is watching. And that's where you'll see it broken out. So get an idea of what people are looking at, get those creative juices sparked, and create something new and different.
And different. Yep.
And different.
New and different. Just keep it fresh. Unless you like doing the same thing over and over again. But I can guarantee you one thing, you might like it, but your audience will get bored after about 18 months to 2 years. And then you'll be like, why is my channel not growing? I haven't changed anything. And you'll be like, exactly, you haven't changed anything. So we've seen that story over and over and over again. So new and fresh. It's good. Well, thank you for hanging out with us again for another episode. Really appreciate you being here and looking forward to hanging out with you again next week for another Video Creators Podcast episode. We'll see you then.